Hi guys, welcome back to In Case of Econ Struggles. Welcome to another AP Micro Struggle. Today we're talking about topic 2.7, which is market disequilibrium and changes in equilibrium. Here's what the College Board wants you to know about this topic. You need to know what a shortage is and what a surplus is, and you need to know how shifting the supply and demand curves affect equilibrium, both if you only shift one of the curves and if you shift both of the curves. So timestamps are below if you would like to jump around, but let's get right into it. Let's start talking about a shortage and surplus. So we know that in equilibrium, quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, and so that happens where supply and demand cross. But what happens if we go to this donut example, what if all the donut shops in town are charging too low of a price? Well, then everyone is going to want to buy a lot of donuts, so you're going to have lines out the door. You're not going to have enough donuts to feed all the people who want a donut, and we call that a shortage. So that's represented here, and you can see that the quantity supplied is less than the quantity demanded, and that's what we call a shortage. In a perfectly competitive market, what's going to happen is that all the donut shops in town are going to realize that they're charging too low of a price. They're going to start raising their prices, and they're going to keep raising their prices until we get back to this point here where supply equals demand. Now on the flip side, it could be the fact that donut places in town are charging too high of a price. And if they're charging too high of a price, that means that no one is walking into their donut shop, and you can see that they've got a lot of donuts that are going to go uneaten and might go stale, because even though all the donut shops are cranking out all of these donuts over here, that quantity supplied is greater than the number of donuts that people are willing to buy at that price point. So what's going to happen? You have a lot of extra donuts. What do? You start lowering the price of donuts, so all the donut places start lowering their prices, and you keep lowering the prices all the way until quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. Now, both a shortage and a surplus are what we call market disequilibrium. It's in disequilibrium because it's not in equilibrium. Quantity demanded is not equaling quantity supplied. And in a perfectly competitive market, what's going to happen is the prices will automatically adjust such that we get back to equilibrium. Let's start talking about how changes in the supply and the demand curve, specifically shifts in the supply and demand curve, affect market equilibrium. Now, I'm going to go through a bunch of examples of how these curves shift. But I think what's super useful is that you and a partner or you and a group of friends get together and you come up with a bunch of different scenarios about what might happen to supply and demand, and you literally just practice drawing these graphs. There is nothing that's going to help you more for this AP micro test when it comes to supply and demand than just sitting there and drawing a bunch of graphs and thinking about what changes which curve, whether or not a curve actually shifts, and what the result is for the equilibrium price and quantity. So for example, let's think about demand only. Let's say demand shifts outward for some reason. You can see that we're going to shift right, and that means that the price and quantity is going to go up because the supply curve hasn't changed. So we're just following along the supply curve, and we get to a new equilibrium with a higher price and a higher quantity. On the other hand, if demand shifts left or shifts down, you can see that again, we're going to follow the supply curve down like this, and we're going to get to a new equilibrium price and quantity with a lower price and a lower quantity than we had before. On the other hand, if we shift supply out, we're not going to get a higher price, but we are going to get a higher quantity. Supply shifts out, so maybe costs for everyone go down. We're going to have a lower price in equilibrium, but a higher quantity. And if supply shifts left, we're going to have a higher price and a lower quantity. In all four of these graphs, we've just shifted one of the curves. What happens if we shift both curves? Well, if we shift both curves, it's not always going to be super clear as to what actually happens to equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. For example, here I've shifted both supply and demand out, and you can see that we definitely have more quantity in equilibrium. The equilibrium quantity is definitely higher, but does price go up or down, or does it stay the same? It's really hard to tell. It really depends on exactly which one of these curves is going to shift more. For example, if demand actually shifted all the way out here, price would also be greater. But if supply shifted more than demand, then price would be lower. Actually, for all four of these graphs, it's going to be true that either price or quantity, it's going to be really clear what happens, and for the other one, it's not really going to be clear what happens. For example, if I shift supply right, but I shift demand left for some reason, then you can see that the quantity stays about the same, but the price goes down. Does quantity go up, down, or stay the same? Again, it depends on how much I've actually shifted both the supply and demand curve. So again, with all of these examples, we can go through a bunch of different scenarios. I'm happy to do that if you leave comments below about specific scenarios. But I think the best thing to do is just get with a buddy, get with a bunch of friends, start drawing some supply and demand curves and shifting them around. And I think that'll really help you understand these concepts. But if this video was helpful, make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time for another case of econ struggles.